So, as you saw by the title of today's video, let's talk about probably the most pressing problem humanity faces at this time, and that is the realization that we are all one, or unique embodiments of the same power, that underneath all these different languages, skin colors, geographical locations, traditions, all these religions and political ideas that are dividing us, that underneath all this, there's just single power reflecting itself in different varieties, embodying itself, if you like, in infinite number of unique ways. This realization is the ultimate enlightenment. To realize that we are all one, unique embodiments of the all, is the ultimate realization. The enlightenment is, you could say, when you realize that you're God, that everybody else is God or divine. And then to realize that this God is equally incarnated in everything else, not just another human being, but animals, plants, the whole earth and the universe, is the ultimate enlightenment. This is the most pressing problem of our time, I would say, because of the nature of the way the world is reacting right now, the way that we are fighting amongst each other, the way that we believe that certain races have the right to conquer and manage other people. We can see this in the Western politics, for instance, in the US, and the Americans believing themselves to be exceptional people gives them the right to, they think that this gives them the right to colonize or to manage, to police other nations. They have to be like them. We see the same problem in, for instance, in the Jewish religion, where the Jews believe themselves to be the chosen people and everybody else is subhuman, animal, if you like. This same ideology is throughout the most of Europe, Western Europe especially. So we have this ideology in 1930s, 1940s of Germany, where we had the superior people ideology. This is fascism, that's all it is. The word fascism comes from the Italian word fascio, which means to band together, to put together different sticks, if you like, to put them together into a bunch. That is to say, create an ideology and people come together. These people with the same complexes, with this complex of inferiority, come together. And then they feel safer because they have the complex that what they do is they have a complex of inferiority first. They don't feel significant or valued or afraid. And this is compensated by a complex of superiority. So they find other groups which match their own need to feel better about themselves, stronger, superior than others. You can see this especially in religion, in Christianity, perhaps the more fanatical parts of Christianity. We see this even in Buddhism. Some people believe that that's even though that they don't say that, but Buddhism is a religion, they still believe that it's a superior ideology to others. So we see this really everywhere, and without the realization that underneath all this there is just single humanity, we cannot solve this problem. So I'll read you a few things that I wrote about this. And how this is reflecting now in our society, how it's changing, sort of helping to change our society, which is moving more to a more integrated, to a more multipolar world, you know, where we kind of start to realize, we kind of start to rearrange ourselves in a way where we don't dominate one race or one ideology has to dominate over all others. This is what Starhawk, perhaps some of you are familiar with her, I don't remember her name, Miriam somebody, she called power over. But what we need is the ideology of power with. And the ideology is not so much of an ideology, but reality of power with comes from a much older and longer lasting tradition of the feminine. This was an ideology already present in the goddess traditions of the Neolithic, for instance. The Stone Age tradition, if you like, or the stone building tradition, because they build with stone. And you have this, for instance, the best known places for these stone monuments are, of course, the British Isles, Stonehenge or the Grange in Ireland and so on. But we know now that this culture was a worldwide culture. So it wasn't only limited to the British Isles, it was actually everywhere. All over the globe, we're finding monuments, we're finding the tombs and the buildings and the stone built, not architecture, I'm looking forward, archaeology. Yeah. And the interesting thing about this culture is that during a funeral, not so much a funeral, but actually the way the people were buried. So for what first happened when someone died, a person would be left out onto the elements, onto the nature, so that the animals could pick the body clean, get rid of the flesh and leave the bones. So all the way to the bones would still be cleaned, and then the bones would be taken and placed in a burial place together with other members of the clan. But the bones were not were not left together as an individual, that is to say, as a skeleton, intact skeleton. The skull would be placed with other skulls, the limbs would be placed with other limbs, you know, the ribs with other ribs. In other words, once after death, we would say, of the fleshy part of the body, the ego, you know, the me, I am this and I am different than you, I look different than you, my name is so and so, I live here. After death of this comes the realization that you return to the oneness of, there is no differentiation between you, and that's why the bones were placed in collectively with the others. You see, later the burials have changed, especially after the beginning of the large empires, the lords and kings and so on. When they were buried, you still got the burial mounds. They would be buried together with the wives, with the concubines, with the servants, and even with the animals. In other words, this ideology changes with the coming of the empire, with the coming of the language, of the written language, and of the religion, organized religion, with the coming of the masculine mind, if you like, which is duality. It says that when I die, I continue as I did before. Nothing changes. I'm still the same person. If I was rich, I will be rich in afterlife. If I was a king, I will be a king in afterlife. If I had servants, I will have servants. But the older tradition, the global tradition of the feminine, says something completely different, that when you die, you return to oneness. You're not different. You're not better than others. You are like the others. Just get rid of the fleshy part, the body, the survival part that says you look different than me, you have a different name, but underneath all that you're the same. Okay, so I'll read you a few bits and bobs that I did over the years regarding this most pressing problem of humanity. And this is what I wrote. Actually, I've posted this again on my Facebook page. And the title goes like this: how is this new mythology of the unified earth as one harmonious being manifesting itself, I hear you ask? Well, it's re-emerging in the gaps between what we call rational thinking and transpersonal feeling, I would say intuition. That is, it's being reborn at that mystic space between old duality, where we see with our physical eyes, but understand with our inward intuitive eye. Intuition sees wholes. Everything is interconnected when you see intuitively. When you see with your feeling, for instance, you only have a feeling or relationship to one person. But intuitively, everything is interconnected. So that's why this is so important. Intuition is the core of the feminine. Or where our mind and heart perceives as one, called the thought of the heart, as birth of a new vision of divine immanence in all creation. The divine child that says, here ends the way we think tribally in terms of myself or our group, community, country and God, where the customs and values of one specific tribe are held to be of intrinsically greater worth than those of another tribe. Is disregarded or ignorance of the ultimate mutual dependency as members of one humanity, members of the sea of life, that is us as our one divine source of creation. Now, in practical terms, you might be asking, so how is this realization of our oneness showing itself in our world? I would say it is showing ourselves in the world of we are living in a very important period of time, historically speaking. We see the birth of a multipolar world. That is to say, countries that are cooperating with each other, economically helping each other to grow, rather than one idea, one set of people, one ideology, one politics dominating other people. So we see this birth of BRICS, for instance, where the countries which used to compete with each other or don't like each other come together, and they now cooperating with each other economically rather than dominating each other. So you don't see so much the power over, but power with. And power with is the feminine. This is relating to each other, even if it is on a level of economical cooperation. We are not seeing this fighting with each other for resources, but cooperating and exchanging, bartering with each other. That's a huge, huge change. And here we see the countries that are actually bringing this into the foreground of humanity are the countries that have been mostly colonized by the West. So you have China, India, Brazil, you got Russia. Russia was tried to be colonized for many, many centuries, for about 500 years without success. So you've got new countries that are wanting to join. That in other words, they don't want to live under this rule of just you do what we tell you to, or there will be consequences. Usually starts with sanctions and then come the bombs. We want to, but they joined because they have the opportunity to grow economically, to be part of the community that is our one country Earth. Yeah. So this is what is said by Daniel Smith. And he said about this problem: the true crisis in our world is not social, political, or economic, or crisis. Our crisis is the crisis of consciousness, an inability to directly experience our true nature, and an inability to recognize this nature in everyone, in all things. That's the crux of the whole thing. You're not going to solve this politically or any other way, or religiously, because it divides us. You've got to understand that underneath all this, there's just a single power manifesting itself in ever more unique ways. Yeah. Now, the next quote is from Anne Baring. This is what she says: we are moving through a huge transformation process. We're really moving from one age to another, just like from the lunar to the solar age. The lunar is the age that I'm talking about, of the feminine. The lunar because of the moon. These people worship the nighttime mystery magic of the nighttime. What's the mystery magic of the nighttime, of the moon? Is the sleeping. You sleep, you dream, you know, you have the access to the divine in your dreams, to God, to the goddess, or whatever you want to call it, to the holy. And that's that's represented symbolically by the nighttime and by the moon. The moon is one of the oldest images of the feminine, and especially the crescent moon, the new moon, the crescent moon, the freshly born moon. That's the new. That's the rebirth of the feminine, of the intuition. Yeah? Now the solar age is associated with the masculine, with the age of the father. The lunar age is associated with the age of the great mother. The solar age is age of the great father, and the father is of course the God, the father. He in the solar age, with the daylight world, you have the separation of everything. You have the separation of light and dark and so on and so on. And you have the separation of heaven and earth. Earth is no longer is no longer seen as holy or divine. Earth is now fallen, especially with the Old Testament. I've spoken about this many times. Yeah? So the solar age is the age of the God, the Father, who is separate. He's out there in the sky, in heaven, separate from earth. So this is the birth of the religions. It started with Judaism and then passed on to Christianity and then to Islam. Yeah? So this is the difference between lunar and solar age. I think we are moving into what might be called a stellar age. And in the stellar consciousness, quite a different kind of consciousness where we can unify those two dimensions of ourselves, lunar feminine of the soul and masculine solar of the rational consciousness. Reunion of soul and nature, or spirit and matter, not separate but as it really is, seamlessly one. That's just my note to this. I added that. Bring them together and give birth to the child of the new era. This is Anne Baring. Oh, we're going for time. Okay, so the new child, you know, when you understand depth psychology or mythology, the new child that she's talking about is the birth of the self, or the inner self. So you have the unifying two aspects of yourself, your intuitive mind and your rational mind. You're seeing outside, but you're understanding with your intuition. That gives birth to the mediator, the one that is both, and that's the inner self, the one that, you know, sits looking into the inner world of what's going on in the psyche, its symbols, and understands this when it's happening in the outside life. So you got your synchronicities, and especially intuition. You know, I mean. Many of you no doubt have been standing somewhere or been walking somewhere and suddenly heard a word or two, and it's meaningful to you. It might not be meaningful to the other person whatsoever. They just happen to say something, but to you it's meaningful, and you caught that, and you understand what it means. Yeah, I was talking to my sister just the other day. She's come here to visit. And she's remembering all these things because she's talking to me about them, and she suddenly remembers all these things. How she got, for instance, came to visit me in Perth, to live with me in Perth, is she was in two minds about going to Perth from Adelaide. She was walking somewhere and suddenly heard someone say Subiaco. Now Subiaco is a suburb, if you don't know where it is, it's a suburb, it's a well-known suburb in Perth. And that's how she made her decision to come, and she didn't look back. You know, so these things are important, the synchronicities and things. This is living imbalanced. This is what it means by the new child. Anne Baring calls it the birth of the new child, being in both worlds at once. Yeah. I'll read to you one more story that I wrote some time ago. A story of an empress. Now, the empress didn't quite understand this concept of unity of all life and asked a sage to help her. The sage took her into a hall fully lit with mirrors, from floor to ceiling, and lit a candle. Maybe some of you know this story. I think I got this story maybe from Joseph Campbell, I don't remember. This one light reflected in the mirrors and became millions of lights. Then the sage took a crystal within which all these lights were reflected, gave it to the empress and said, "This is you. Although you seem to be alone, within you is this one light that is, in fact, all the lights. As each of these lights is itself that one light that is all the lights too. And nature and all its life are reflections of this single mystery of oneness, this single light of light that is the all in us all." So there she was. She didn't understand the concept of oneness. So sage took her to a hall full of mirrors, lit up a candle, gave her a crystal, and the crystal was her. And the crystal, like all the other lights, it had the same light reflected in that crystal. So the same light is reflected in you. This is what it means to be divine. And the highest form of enlightenment is to understand this oneness. Yeah? This oneness that underneath all these appearances on the surface of this fighting for resources, of this fighting for power and for controlling of others. Our ideology is better than yours. Our duck god is better than your chicken god. Underneath all this childish need for feeling more important than others, being better than others, underneath all that, there is no such thing. The soul is every single thing, including you, is a unique embodiment of this power. Everything. So when you realize this, the more people realize this, all this need for these superiority complexes, which are, like I said, are born out of inferiority, and people coming together to these groups and things that make them feel better, superior about their own inferiority, you know, all this falls apart. There's no need to go and, you know, kill others because somebody somewhere said that land belongs to the chosen, and you have no right to it. You know, this kind of childish nonsense just completely falls apart. Yeah, this notion of the Western superiority or exceptionalism, which is called now, that it you know, this is not even primary school stuff. People that understand this just shake their heads and go, for Peter's sake, really grow up. So all this falls apart. So that's what I wanted to talk to you today about. This most pressing problem of our humanity, the realization of our oneness. This has been my consistent message now for decades. I'll leave all these things in the video description so you can read it for yourself. Those of you that are not interested in watching videos or don't like watching videos, you can read. Also, please, if you found this video helpful, if you find my videos and my work helpful, please leave a comment or, you know, click like or even subscribe to my channel. It helps the channel grow so that you will be able to reach more people, hopefully. And, you know, if you feel like inclined to help me more directly, there are links. There will be links in the description, and I thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.